Topics and opinions following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Well, the music there, Born to Be Alive. I'm not sure whether it knew whether to go quicker or slower or what the story was there. But anyway, we're here on Until Now with Rosie Pica on W4CY Radio, where we talk to ordinary people with extraordinary experiences. And I'm really pleased this week because a long-time friend of mine from Thailand is my guest today. So you're getting a bit of a multicultural program. The Americans get to listen to an Aussie that they've worked out from hearing the voice already, together with a Pommy friend of mine from long ago. Andrew, we got you on the line?
Hi, Rosie. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Andy. And yourself?
I'm good. I think you probably need to explain to people, Rosie, what a pommy is, and a pommy in Thailand with that.
Yes, well, they'll have enough trouble with their accents. Like, people always tell me that I talk too fast, and I say, no, you listen too slow. So now they're going to have double the dilemma between this Aussie here and that pommy there, and a pommy is an Englishman, and especially on foreign soil at that. So we'll confuse them no end because it's 9 o'clock at night for them there, whereas, you know, we're in the midst of our day and a bit of a heat wave here. I'm not sure what you've got there in Thailand.
Well, first of all, no problem, and I'll try and slow down so people can understand my Yorkshire accent. And yes, in Thailand, looking out of the window, it's a little bit muggy, 26 degrees. Normally, it's 35 degrees, stifling hot with 90% humidity. So, yeah, a little bit of a change.
And a conversion for them, that's Fahrenheit. So guys think like your mid-90s, I guess that would be. For them to understand that level of heat. We've got about the same here. It's a bit stifling. But the exciting bit that I want our listeners to be aware of is your history and your background, and why I say I love listening to ordinary people that have got extraordinary experiences and that have created extraordinary results in their short lifetime. And you are the founder. I first met you, it'd be over a decade ago now. I won't go exactly how long. I don't need my listeners to know. Work out the math. But at Bali Business School, where we all came with our great ideas and initiatives for global businesses that not only had a component of business for ourselves, but a takeaway and an added on value to the community in general. And yours was Plant a Tree Today Foundation, which I understand was about raising awareness environmentally about the importance and the value of trees, and I guess what each individual could do to contribute to carbon offsets, but also sustainability. So please correct me if I'm incorrect in what I've shared, and also add on what's occurred in the last decade.
Well, you're perfectly right in what we set out to do, Rosie. It was an idea and a concept that, if you go back to the words of Paul Dunn, with attraction, you get traction. And literally that's what happened at the Bali Business School with the concept that I had. I saw a need over a decade ago for somebody to step in and actually plant trees. There was a lot of work talking about deforestation, stopping deforestation. And that's very, very valid, obviously. But what really was happening from my perspective was people were not putting the trees back. And it takes 2 minutes to chop a tree down, and people forget that, you know, there's a disconnect here, that it can take 50 to 100 years for that tree to grow back. So we set about not only educating people about the benefits of the environment, but set about planting trees. And
I guess too, the important thing for people, like I learnt for myself personally, not coming from this industry or having the level of awareness that you have, that these trees that are cut down, some of them take up to 300 years to reach the same level of carbon offsetting ability that we have on the planet.
That's right. That's right. So what we did was set about finding ways to raise money to plant trees. And at the time, the climate change agenda was high in people's mind, especially with Al Gore and Leonardo DiCaprio. So it was an easy element for us to tap into that. Today, we don't focus so much on the climate change issue. We try and promote the benefits of biodiversity, the communities that can earn revenue from the forest, and look at all of the animals that are living in these areas. I've got a good friend who does orangutan protection work in Sumatra, Dr. Ian Singleton. And when you start to look at the fact we don't put the trees back, or the habitat for these animals is diminishing, there's far-reaching problems other than just climate change. Climate change is a big one. So
obviously, natural disasters too, because I know I was in Sumatra after the tsunami disaster, and I was there went to Aceh, where it's completely leveled and absolutely nothing is left.
Oh, without a doubt. And as you say, some of the trees have taken 100 to 200, 300 years to grow, and we've got to make a concerted effort to put those back. And that's one of the things that it's taken us a long time, and fundraising is always a difficult topic for people. But we're reaching about nearly 1 million trees now. So that's been...
Wow, that's a huge number.
I'll
jump in now and then, Andrew. You'll get used to me. I'll jump in only because I'm going to represent the voice of the listener that says, for example, average Joe Blow, like kids these days, they're used to food that comes out of packaging and boxes and products and things like that. So let alone do they know how to grow their own food, let alone do they even know the importance of that tree that is around them, or some of the, I'll call them morons for want of a better word, of those that don't like a tree in their way around some of the exclusive suburbs, even though it's been there for thousands of years, and drill a hole into it and stick some poison into it. So people ask a question like, how can planting trees help? So let's take it back to basics for our listeners of what is the value and the importance of having a tree, and is it any type of tree? And when we cut one down, should we plant two? So I've just given you a whole range of questions that I'm going to start with, just so the listener comes up to speed with your level of awareness.
I think the most important thing we've got to remember is we breathe oxygen, and trees produce oxygen and remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. That's one of the fundamental basics that people learn at school, and obviously it's important. Trees have got multiple benefits. We work on an element called framework species restoration, Rosie, where we take particular seeds from a location so that we're using
native seeds,
indigenous trees. So there's no foreign trees being introduced to the area. But the smart part of what we've done on all of our projects is plant trees that attract seed dispersing animals. And what that does, we plant 30 species of tree in a project, and birds and mammals will come to that site, eat the seeds, and disappear. Now, we conducted a study. One of our staff members was undertaking a PhD, and we found that in 6 years, there were then 90 species of tree in that project site. So that was just inside our project site. So you can see, we've planted X number of trees, and that's multiplied significantly just in our project zone, not to mention in the trees that are outside of that project zone. So there's a whole element of biodiversity, recreating nature. And what we do is fast track what nature takes 100 years or more to recreate. And the benefits, there's so many in terms of watershed management. You've seen it certainly in Southeast Asia, we get a lot of landslides. A lot of that can be attributed to deforestation. The trees have been cut down, the topsoil is removed. You may recall something closer to home for me, but there was huge floods in Bangkok a few years ago. And that can be attributed to the deforestation in the northern part of Thailand. The topsoil, because of the lack of tree cover, the topsoil is washed into the rivers. And therefore the silt on the bottom of the river raises the river bed. And when you then get large volumes of water due to the torrential rain and monsoons we get here, the rivers can't handle that flow of water, and ultimately we get flooding. So you can keep, I could talk for a long time.
Yes, there's quite a list of the enhancements that are done. I know I actually met with Datu Mendapessa, who was one of the tribal rainforest leaders of one of the last virgin rainforests within the Philippines, and he would petition the UN every year in an attempt to stop deforestation and logging occurring within his area. And I've got to say, I've met many people around this globe, having extensively travelled, as you will of yourself, and he's the only person I've ever met. He was like a mini John Denver. His energy was so light, so gay, so joyful, so happy, and yet he'd never slept in a physical bed. He slept under the trees outside in nature, whether it poured down rain or irrespective of the weather. And his message was, and still is to this day, whisper only words of love. And the reason why is because the trees here and their extensive network, for like some people may not be aware, that top that you see of the tree, all that foliage or foliage, depending which country I want to be in and pronounce it, as massive as that is above ground, it's as massive as that, or if not more, underground. And it's an extensive interconnected network to all. So he says, whisper only words of love, because the trees here, the trees follow that message through into the breeze that goes into the waters, into the oceans. Everything we breathe in, that oxygen that they give out that has that message of love, we consume that water, which our body is over 70% water alone, that we consume from that message. So that's an important understanding, that we've got that ecosystem that we see naturally, but there's an internal, intrinsic, I guess, spiritual ecosystem, in a sense, that we're all interconnected to. So the trees, I guess, are of paramount value from that aspect. I've been asked a question, does it help to use the trees to build the sea floor?
Not entirely sure what I mean by that question, what's meant by that question in terms of the tree sea floor.
I know that there was one gentleman who was renowned. Now, let me see if I can get his details. He's an Indian man who single-handedly, so this is for those people who think, but I'm only one person. What can I do? This Indian man was only one person at the age of 17 on a barren sandbar in northern India. He was devastated because all the area, the deforestation that had occurred there, that so many snakes had come on board on that sandbar, and they'd all died from the heat. They had no protection. They had no natural sand. And he thought, this is just so cruel. So he single-handedly, at the age of 17, got that initiative to start planting. And he single-handedly ended up planting a 1,360-acre forest. He's now 47 years of age and still planting. Luckily for you, you don't have to do this single-handedly. You are actually collecting a community mind and a community initiative in order to support you in what you do. And that's part of what I love about what you do. So for people that want to take this initiative beyond what you do and, start, because I don't know that you're doing it in countries outside of Thailand.
We are. Just going back, Rosie, the two people you mentioned, amazing individuals, and certainly the gentleman in India, I'm aware of his projects, and that is unbelievable what that gentleman has done. And as you say, single-handedly. What we've been trying to do is motivate people to do something. And you mentioned, it is quite often people thinking, well, I can't do anything. Well, that's true. You may not be in a position, you may live in a high-rise flat, or if you do have a garden, you can plant a tree. But that's where we come to the fore. We're here, we're in Asia. We've planted trees in multiple countries throughout Asia, and we need the support of people to help us continue our work. And
exactly.
it is about getting that message out. One of the things that we've been doing in Thailand previously, we set up a tree nursery. And we've taken over 10,000 children over the decade to that nursery. They get their hands dirty.
Yes.
Orphan kids out from the slums of Bangkok that have never seen the countryside, never seen the animals or the forest. And we show them what we're doing, show them literally how this works. And one of the reasons behind that is educating children, because they're the leaders of the future. They're the leaders of industry, business, potential leaders of countries. And getting them involved in an environmental aspect at an early age gives them some affinity to what's going on. It's not a money go around. It's not a concrete jungle. There is an element of nature that we should embrace, and we should really take care of this, because in years to come, it may not be there. And those animals live in the wild.
I think that's really important to come back to. I just want to remind my listeners, if you want to join into the chat, you're listening to W4CY. You can go to w4cy.com, and on the right-hand side, you can click on the link and ask your questions. I'm talking to Andy Steele, who's the founder of Plant a Tree Today Foundation, and we'll give you links to Andrew Steele, his entrepreneurial website, to be able to assist in making our world a better place, in creating an environment that we can all live in the future and enjoy. So remember to click join in live, and like us as well. That helps get the message out at any time. Now, one thing that was I wanted to go back to there that you were just discussing was with the children, that they wouldn't have seen those environments. And I know, with having travelled extensively throughout the US, and last year I took my son to China, and I was most impressed within China that for where they have a concrete jungle, they make sure right next to it is a natural space and place. It's the yin and yang. They want that balance, because they understand that an imbalance leads to dis-ease and discomfort and distress. So that would be, I think, a strong message, because most people only do stuff because they think, well, what's in it for me? So the what's in it for me is really important, that generation that you're seeking to influence and to help mentor through, to make our environment one worthwhile passing on as a legacy to the next generation, is introducing them to it at the earliest age. And the oh wow, and the value, like my own son, he enjoys to plant seedlings and actually see them start to take root. It's a living, vibrant thing, just as we are. And we've just been asked questions, do you take donations for the trees? That's probably going to be a hell yeah.
Of course, on our website.
And do you plant from seed? So I'll just go back to you on those children that you're influencing and making a positive difference, because within, as you mentioned, within the UK, they may not have seen that much greenery. And I know within the US, there certainly is a lot of those that don't have access to the nurseries, that don't have access to those environments. So setting that up, I think, is a phenomenal initiative and should be thoroughly endorsed and supported.
Rosie, I've got those questions. I'll come back to those in a moment.
Yep.
What you've mentioned about China is very important, and it's great to see the initiative taking place because of the pollution that they're experiencing.
Exactly.
They realize that those trees have got the ability to remove some of those pollutants from the atmosphere and effectively act as a cleaner and producing clean oxygen. And that's important. Just giving you some statistics, a company a long time ago actually said that if you stood on the streets of Bangkok, and Bangkok is heavily congested, for 8 hours a day, it's the equivalent to smoking a ridiculous number of cigarettes. So
I couldn't imagine. It's hard enough to cross the sidewalk there in Bangkok, let alone stand on the street for 8 hours.
Those sort of initiatives where people are understanding the health benefits are great. You know, that there are other benefits beyond just trees remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. But coming back to children and people and bringing it closer to home, let's be quite frank. Trees don't do a lot. They're ornamental and they sometimes look nice, but they don't really pull on the heartstrings. And what
they do if you listen to Datu Mendapessa.
But you know, people tend to understand and feel these are all valid causes, of course, but for hunger or for saving orangutans, etc., and they're very, very valid causes. But what they don't realize is the link where trees come in. Certainly, trees can provide food for communities, and that also can provide an income, which is a vital part of the economy in Southeast Asia. People live off the forest, whether it's a commercial plantation or whether it is literally just a forest where they're deriving products that they can sell at a local factory. There'll be an infrastructure where there's a cottage industry and they can generate income from that. Second to that, as I mentioned earlier, we're just giving you a statistic from Thailand. There are less than 3,000 elephants in Thailand. Now, that figure absolutely astounded me because I thought there were lots more. 1,500 of those elephants are domesticated. Now, that's a separate topic. So that tells me now there are only 1,500 elephants in the wild in Thailand. You have issues with elephants, certainly in Cambodia, because their natural habitat is diminishing. They go foraging for food, and they then go looking in villages and causes human conflict with those elephants. And what happens quite often, people try and protect their homes and the elephants lose out. So the diminishing habitat is a problem, and we need to put those trees back. And one of the things that came to mind was the medicinal value of the forest. I think we're in a world now, an age where we're starting to understand all the benefits of the superfoods, the antioxidants, etc. And there was a quote a few years ago where somebody had said they believe all of the cures to the world's illnesses can come from the forest. And I'm starting to believe that myself. All of the products that we can consume, as long as we're not, the issues are coming from additives and preservatives and not eating fresh food. All of these processed food, links to cancer, etc. There are lots of elements coming from the forest that can provide cures. And I think you'll see over the next decade or two, we'll start to understand that in a far deeper way, and hopefully find some of the cures to the illnesses around the world. And look at the recent emerging information about cannabis oil. I know it's not a tree, but cannabis oil can have an effect on cancerous cells. There are other natural medicines that have similar effects on cancerous cells, and it's a problem for everybody. So when you look at the rainforest in South America and it diminishing at a ridiculous rate per day, we start to wonder how many of the world's natural cures are now being lost because of that deforestation. So it answers one of the questions from earlier, what benefits do we get from trees? I think they're untold, and some of them we probably don't know as yet.
Well, that's an important one to highlight, is the fact that you increase the value on something, all of a sudden it becomes protected, it becomes enhanced, awareness is raised around it, and then there is a new value. Like at the moment, the value is, I guess, in the deforestation of what they currently see that forest, what its value is for, the end products of which it creates. So if you change that end result of what it's creating to something where the forest is sustained as it is, interestingly enough, you will have changed entirely the way we go about utilising those environments and taking advantage of them. Because let's face it, people are always going to be out there, out for a buck. And sadly, that's the way the world's been working for quite a while. And even though there's many people doing great things that, first and foremost is human beings and a livelihood and a valuable livelihood, unfortunately, there's also that element that's only driven by a dollar, and they let consequences be something they face later instead of looking at what we can do right now. So there's a question that's been asked. So you're talking about planting all kinds of things. So what are the projects that you're focused on right now that you are doing, that you are planting the seed of, I guess, using that pun?
Well, actually, the biggest focus at the moment is a new project called Conservation Community. One of the things that I'm finding, Rosie, and this is where, I look back at what we do and we plant trees. That's great, and we want to continue doing that. But we get numerous requests from various organizations around the world for financial support. And when we're not able to do that, the charity work we do, it's hand to mouth, and it's a very tough environment, trying to find corporates to make large donations so you can do large projects, and individuals that will donate to literally plant a tree.
Does the tree planting, just to butt in there for a sec, does it, like as in for a corporate initiative, and I'm thinking it's a really great idea of the way that people can connect to each other as well as connect to the earth that they're a part of, those tree planting days, do they work? Is that something that you would, can help sponsor in other countries and locations in order to instigate and innovate?
Actually, quite frankly, what we find is what we call greenwashing. Companies are interested in doing the tree planting day and getting their people out into the environment, but it's more for the grip and grin and photographs for their marketing to show they're doing something. It's not sustainable, Rosie, and we've done this across multiple countries, and it is very, very difficult to coordinate, especially when you're not on the ground. And
Got it.
Can cause untold issues, which is why the new project I will go into is coming to fruition. What we've worked on, and we've spent a significant amount of time with IT developers, is overlaying a virtual map on Google. And this is some technology that we've developed in the UK that Google will only allow charities to integrate with Google Maps. And ultimately, it means that if there's a project in Malawi, in Africa, or a project in Vietnam that isn't necessarily about tree planting, but it's about conservation, we can put that project into the social media stratosphere and people can support it. And literally, we can then funnel that money down to communities on the ground and organizations to protect that area or to reforest certain areas. And we see this as a far wider reaching project that will allow us to do a lot more than what we're currently doing, which is, it's beneficial, it's just planting trees. And this gives us the ability to work with other organizations. I'll use, for example, the Woodland Trust in the UK. They have lots of protected areas in the UK, but they don't have this mechanism. So we can partner up with the Woodland Trust in the UK and protect areas of forest in England, for example. We're waiting to launch the project and talk to the Royal Forestry Department in Thailand and do the same thing and let them do the marketing work to generate some revenue. And this opens up the door really for corporates to come in and say, well, okay, we understand there are X number of hectares in a project in Peru. We'd like to sponsor that project. And they get the marketing leverage out of it because their logo or the individual's face is on the map. And we've
exactly
to create a community around it. And that's one of the, you mentioned being entrepreneurial, Rosie. It's one of the ways I see that our organization can have a far greater reach and far deeper penetration.
Oh, look, I think it's sensational. I think it's sensational, Andy. I've got a question that's any place in the States do this, because I can see already in my mind an overlapping map of, like, for example, what is, and on social media, the overlapping map, and a community can come together to sponsor within their own neighbourhood, within their own community, you know, a park that's nearby, a lake that's nearby, whatever area that is nearby within their schools, that they can use it to educate and increase awareness of the kids environmentally within that area, but all being able to stick their faces on the social media map that we did this, you know, this little portion of the globe, and seeing that overlapping map getting filled in by those putting their hands up, be it corporate as well as, the reason I keep including schools is because you and I know that's where the leaders of the future are going to come from. And as we can mentor and motivate those minds at a much earlier stage, they're the ones that reintroduce topics to their parents and to their community as a whole. Because it's something that's of importance to the kids. And that's why us parents do stuff.
That's interesting, because there's a similarity, Rosie, with our kids. Probably slightly different in age. But I look at my kids as they are my, for want of a better word, they are my customers of the future. What's motivating them? What makes them tick? Now, we're the generation that are Facebook users. My kids don't use it. It's dead to them. Okay? So you've got to start to think, okay, what's motivating? What's making them click? What interests them? And they're using Snapchat or Instagram. So they've moved on. So I spoke to them about exactly what you've embraced. How cool is this to have your face on Google, on social media, everywhere, to say, well, I'm helping this community. And as DJ said, okay, are there any places in the States? I do hope so. If there's a particular national park, then let's get the community in that area supporting that national park. I need the contacts once the project is rolled out in the next 2 months. I need the contacts in the US to say, can we bring you on board? Can we work with you on this? And it becomes a partnership. But
exactly, because one of the questions that's just come in is, how do you make it interesting? And I thought, well, the interesting part is actually physically being able to do something locally that's hands-on, that's tangible, that is away from that technology and away from that environment, but you can incorporate the technology together with it. So they're not missing out. They're then being able to leave something physically and go back to their, solo environments where they all sit beside each other with an iPad or a mobile phone and tweak what they've just been doing.
Ultimately, what we're saying here is you can think locally, you can support locally, but by supporting conservation, supporting reforestation, supporting tree planting, etc., you are acting globally, because the tree planting, we focus on tree planting in Asia, not because there's any particular reason. That carbon sink will act globally. We do a lot of the tree planting work in Asia quite simply because it's more cost effective. It's far cheaper to plant a tree here than it is in the UK, in Australia, in America, and we get more benefits from it. So, there's a lot of things we can do, and I think it's a paradigm shift, Rosie, in terms of how can we help more people? And what I want to do is provide that mechanism. So we become, as well as tree planting, but we become a funding conduit, and we can support far more people doing this, rather than saying, okay, can you support a particular project in a region of Thailand? Because quite often people are nationalistic. There's nothing wrong with that. People in England say, well, why do I need to support a project in Thailand? I want to support a project in England. Somebody in Florida will say, hey, I want to promote something locally. I want to support something. So that's what my aim is in the future. And I'm hoping 2017, this is rolled out. And then the next element is finding the project, and then the marketing and actually getting people to donate the money to support these projects.
I think that acting locally is a very important strategy as part of it, and being able to see that the part and the parts together make it greater than the whole, because of the fact that I know that within lots of areas within the US that don't have access to finances that can be sponsored and supported within their own local neighbourhoods, that give their children an opportunity and a vision that they otherwise would not have had the opportunity or vision for. They do fun runs, we do, bike rallies, walk for long distances to raise funds. Now, as interesting as all those things are, after you've ridden a bike for so long, that's the end of it. The bike's tucked away. One person's got a sore butt and there is a bike. That's the end of the market. Whereas investing into and creating something that is live, that is ongoing, I think is intensely far more interesting and exciting to me to be part of as a project, not just the feel-good factor of that, yes, what we're doing for our neighbourhood and our community, but that you can actually see it as a marker 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. It has a roll-on effect that accumulates, and that interest, therefore, should accumulate.
I totally agree. And when you look at that, you mentioned the sustainability element with today's modern banking features. Once you've done this, you don't literally, have to worry about it again. One of the biggest challenges charities face is it's the Oliver Twist Act. You know, they put the bowl out, they need some funds to keep doing the great work they do, but they then have to go back and say, please, sir, can I have some more? And quite often you feel like Oliver Twist. It's as if you're begging for money to do something that is benefiting everybody. Now, with this
I'm thinking straight away of some trees, like I know in certain areas they're looking at planting fruit trees now, because at least there is the fruits that can be supplied to fruit markets, that can be community orientated, you know, feed some children and adults that wouldn't otherwise get fed.
Totally, I agree, and that's one of the things we need to worry about in the future with the population increases that we expect to go to 9 billion people by 2050. Where's all the food going to come from? So if we can derive some produce from the forest, whether that's fruit or other elements, even coffee beans, because they're a bush classified as a tree, so to speak, we can start to tackle some of these areas, these issues. And one of the things I want to mention, Rosie, like you said about the sustainability of things, when you look at the price, what we're going to do is roughly target and protection of an acre per year. And it works out about $5 a month. And that's not a lot considering a Starbucks, and presuming in the US.
Yeah.
Bucks, huh? So,
yeah.
You know, we're asking is feel good about this. And, you know, if we get Starbucks on board, maybe we can get them to support these sort of projects. You know?
Exactly. Well, I mean, they use those coffee cups and all the rest of it. You know, I assume what they're made out of. And again, they can have their little logo, a little tree on the side, something that you purchase, something you're giving back automatically as you purchase.
That's right. For me, it's a new concept, and we don't want to move away from tree planting and education. They are still very, very important aspects. We just need to make sure that we're supporting other communities that don't always have the same focus as just tree planting. But as you say, there may be, in Thailand, I'll give you an example, they have community forests. And the previous king, who unfortunately passed away recently, had a project called the Sustainable Economy. And that was 1.5 hectares of land can support a whole community by doing various different things, whether it's trees, rice, frogs that they can eat. They can support that whole community from 1.5 hectares. And that can be up to 200 people. And now that's phenomenal.
So I think I'll go without the frogs, but then again, in China, they had the spiders on the stick, they had the scorpions on the stick. Then there'd be a whole heap that could be fed in your jungles. I think the Americans might have a bit more refined palate, or I like to think so. I could be wrong. They could have crocodiles on the diet.
I saw products coming out of America recently, which was cricket protein. So there may be some mileage in this yet. You know, maybe not for our palate, but there are people producing these products. You know.
Well, I know over here they're doing community gardens within Australia, and I know I've seen Jamie Oliver on TV as well, who's your kin, that likes to talk about the community gardens. And I'm not sure within America. I know some of the locations like coastal areas that introduce that, but you find naturally as a demographic, as you move further away from the ocean and more inland, people become heavier and heavier and heavier. And I'm going to throw it out there as a wild assumption that you're not walking on the beach and that you're not quite as active, or don't have that calling to be out in the sunshine and be out in nature. And that's one thing that we're blessed with here, is great areas for nature walks and to absorb, you know, that energy and that frequency that you don't get in your concrete jungle, that you don't get under fluorescent lights day in, day out, that you don't get just running on a concrete path around more concrete buildings. So within the US, I would say that this would be quite exciting to create not only their natural gardens and fruits and vegetables, but also their own walk of sorts, their own natural area, and their own quiet place for some solace and some space that they don't otherwise get.
Totally agree with you, Rosie. I think actually going for a run in the park or through the forest into the mountains, it's tranquil, it's peaceful.
Yes.
and far more beneficial than taking a run around a couple of blocks in the concrete jungle.
So, and that's the problem with the cities. Like there are lots of areas like, through Colorado where they enjoy their walks up, in amongst the Rockies and, as enjoyable and stimulating. I enjoy that for the difference. However, I must say, we're blessed with the rainforests that are around us and the natural hinterland that we take this for granted. There are other people that would never have even had this experience. So to at least introduce it on a small scale. So I'm just thinking for listeners that are hearing today that are going, well, I'm rather interested. My kids go to school and I think this would be a really cool project. Or, I'm part of a corporate group. And yes, we've done the same old corporate gigs to death year after year. This sounds quite interesting. At the same token, how would they be able to take it any further? Is there contacts for you that you can supply, that they can get in touch with you and open a discussion?
Without a doubt, Rosie. Main thing I would say is go to our website, www.pattfoundation.org. Send us a contact message. We'll log it. We'll get back in touch. This can be ongoing conversations about the new conservation community, how we can assist in new potential areas, providing we can raise the money to do that, or how they can support projects in Asia as it stands.
Exactly. So that site was Plant a Tree Today as an acronym. So Papa Alpha Tango Tango for me as an ex-cop with the phonetic spelling. So that's P for Papa, A for Alpha, T for Tango, T for Tango, which stands for Plant a Tree Today. Dot, was that correct? Dot Foundation?
Not
Plant. Okay, you go it.
P-A-T-T. All one word, pattfoundation.org.
Got it. So P-A-T-T, so Papa Alpha Tango Tango, and then the word foundation, FOUNDATION.org. O-R-G, Oscar Romeo Golf as the phonetic spelling. So I'm quite sure they should be able to put it, I don't know how to put it on the live chat there, but they might be able to add it in so that we've got it at the end. So pattfoundation.org, and get in contact with Andy Steele. And you're also on Facebook as well, so they can contact you there, can't they?
That's right. I think we're across quite a few social media fronts. That's the way of the world nowadays, Rosie, right?
Oh, yeah, it's the bane of my existence. I must admit, I like being outdoors. I don't like having to be stuck in at technology. But as much as I might want to complain about it, without it, we wouldn't have the world that we have today, where we can unite and collectively come together, those people that really care and really want to make a difference. And as much as we might get inundated with the news and all the terrible happenings around the world, we start to think, oh God, that's the world around us, when in reality there's 7 billion of us plus at the moment, and that focus is on the smallest percentage that is doing the terrible stuff. That's what I loved about the opportunity of doing this program, is because I can share ordinary people that are doing creating extraordinary results via their own extraordinary experiences. So that site for you, once again, is Pat Foundation, which is spelt Papa, P, A for Alpha, T for Tango, T for Tango, Foundation, all written as the one word, pattfoundation.org. O for Oscar, R for Romeo, G for Golf. Yes, we've got that now shared out there so they can connect to you and see what you can get started in different neighbourhoods. So for yourself personally, this is your professional passion. I see the exciting photos. You don't look like you've aged a day in over a decade since I last saw you. That must be that youthful spending time with the trees.
I suppose there's an element of that, Rosie. I'm blessed in as much as I get out to communities, I'm outside. One of the jobs that I dislike the most actually is, as you mentioned, the technical side and the fundraising side. I prefer to be outside with the projects and interacting with communities. As I say, I've been blessed to go and work with hill tribes in northern Thailand on the Burmese border, work with orphanages on the Burmese border as well. for me, that's fantastic. So if that keeps me youthful, then yeah, I think there's a benefit and we should get more people doing it.
I think it honestly does, because I mix with, as I mentioned earlier, many people around the globe. And I find the most people that complain of being tired and exhausted is not because they're running on empty, as they like to say. It's because they're all full up with what doesn't fulfill them and what doesn't thrill them. And if that's all that you've got in your energy, it does feel exhausting, it does feel draining, and it is not revitalized and renewed. And as I mentioned, Datu Mendapessa, who only spent his entire life in amongst the trees, he's got 9 children. He doesn't get to see them that often because he's always off petitioning the UN and different locations to educate people about the importance and the value of trees on this planet and of environments as they are now. And his energy is irrepressible. I have never been around a person whose frequency is flying so high, and you can't help but grin from ear to ear in being present with him. And he doesn't even have to say anything. So I really want to thank you, because you share some of that energy today. And if people could see you, they'd see the gorgeous man that I'm talking to on the other side of the world that has an equally gorgeous wife and his beautiful children. And if that's what trees do, I'm going to be a tree hugger and a tree swinger for as many days as I've got left.
I think, Rosie, you touched upon something there that's important in life, and it goes beyond the environmental focus that I have, but it's finding your passion. And once you find your passion, you'll walk over broken glass to accomplish what you need to do. And I use an analogy. I wake up every day and there's a brick wall in front of me. And the day I wake up and I'm not willing to run at that brick wall to try and knock it down is the day I actually need to think, I'm doing the wrong thing. This isn't my passion. I need to find something else. So I think that there's a lesson there which goes beyond the trees and the forest and what people should be looking at themselves and how to actually have a fulfilling and enjoyable life.
And that's why I think the community initiative is such a strong one. We've only got a couple of minutes left, but I really want to endorse that for people, even whether it's Plant a Tree Today or another initiative, because the more that we're around other people with like minds, the more we are fulfilled, because life is about relationships. The trees are here to teach us that. They're interconnected. They are able to communicate between each other as highways of frequencies, and we do too. So when we're on our own is when we quickly are left with just our own thoughts, and if they're not very fulfilling, it's not an enjoyable time, place or space. And with PTSD and so many other issues on the rise, depression, apathy, I think being able to get out and just take time out in an environment of solitude and making it a beautiful, peaceful one, I'm all for supporting that.
Okay, totally.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Andy. And I look forward to when we connect again. I don't know when I'm next in Bangkok. It's been a little while, but you might make it to Australia, or we might meet up in the US. Who knows?
No problem, Rosie. You take care and have a nice day.
I will. Thank you so much. And for our listeners, you're listening to W4CY Radio. The program is Until Now with Rosie Picar. Our special guest today has been Andrew Steele, and his website you can contact and get more information on how you can get involved is www.PAT-Alpha-Tango-Tango-Foundation.org. And I'm quite sure as you contact him and see all the amazing projects that he's up to now and has been involved in, over the decades, that you will find more ways to feel good and less ways to feel bad. I look forward to talking to you next week. Tune in at the same time. And remember to like us on Facebook, Twitter, wherever else, and enjoy your new year. Talk to you soon.